Hi everyone, I'm Celeste. Welcome to my BookTube channel, A Reader's Almanac. And today I'm exploring historical fiction books. I would like your help in deciding which adult historical fiction books I should read in 2026. Now, I don't necessarily mean new releases in 2026. I just mean books that are new to me. I've probably read about 15 or 20 historical fiction books, but over the winter I've been very cozy with my coffee, sitting in my reading chair and watching some BookTube channels which are actually devoted to historical fiction. And I'm seeing that there are some really potentially wonderful titles out there, and I have FOMO. I have fear of missing out, and I want to correct that. I'm going to share a list of potential titles that I've found very intriguing that I would like to explore further and share those with you to see if they might be books that I would like to read in 2026. Of course, I've read a lot of children's historical fiction, but I'm going to save children's historical fiction for a whole separate video. So for the purposes of today's conversation, we're just going to be chatting about adult historical fiction. So, okay, the first 5 are classics. So they would tick off the box for reading classics as well as historical fiction. One that I have always been curious about is The Good Earth by Pearl S. Buck. Okay, so The Good Earth by Pearl S. Buck is a classic work of fiction. It won the Nobel Prize, I think. No, the Pulitzer. It won the Pulitzer Prize in the 1930s. I want to say 1932. And this tells the story of a farmer and his family in an old agrarian community in China and their trials and tribulations. It's a novel of human experience, the human condition and human struggle and triumph. And I've always wanted to read it. Is it considered historical fiction? Because, I mean, it goes from, I'm looking at my notes here again, I'm sorry. What's the time frame? I think it starts in the 1800s and goes to the 1930s, which is when the book was published. So I guess the early part of it would be considered historical fiction. I don't know. You tell me in the comments below if The Good Earth by Pearl S. Buck is considered historical fiction. But in any event, it's a classic and I would like to read it. Next up is another book that I think is historical fiction, but I'm not positive. Again, it's a classic, and I'm going to read it anyway, because a lot of people are reading it right now. It's making the rounds, and it's enjoying a resurgence on BookTube. So again, I have FOMO and don't want to miss out on that. And that is Lonesome Dove by Larry McMurtry. And I've got my notes here, so I'm going to turn my gaze here again for a second. In the late 1870s, there are 2 famous retired Texas Rangers who run the Hat Creek Cattle Company and Livery Emporium in the small Texas border town of Lonesome Dove. And this is about a trek that they take, I think. It centers on the relationships between several retired Texas Rangers and their adventures driving a cattle herd from Texas to Montana, and contains themes including old age, unrequited love, and friendship. That sounds great to me. And so again, let me know in the comments, is this historical fiction? I don't know, but I'm going to read it. Another work of historical fiction that I absolutely want to read is, because I've already bought it, is The Joy Luck Club by Amy Tan. Now, this was hugely popular years ago when I was younger. This is the story of 4 Chinese women who get together throughout 1949 They meet on a regular basis to play the game Mahjong. And while they're playing Mahjong, they trade lots and lots of stories and reflections and flashbacks about their lives, family stories. And I think there are 16 different vignettes that span the 4 generations. And it's supposed to be wonderful. I love this edition. I just think this cover is absolutely beautiful. This is one of the Red Spine vintage classics, and I collect some of these, and I just love the teacups on the cover of this. So yeah, I'm very interested in trying the Joy Luck Club. I know I'm late to the party on this one by decades, but better late than never, right? This next novel, I do not know much about. It was a total cover buy, and I bought it based on the recommendation of, is it Tristan from Tristan and the Classics? And so yes, I bought a vintage edition of this, not knowing much about it, other than the fact that he praised it on his BookTube channel, and that is Gallows Thief by Bernard Cornwell. Now, Bernard Cornwell is known for his historical fiction set in many different eras of human history, but this one is set in 1820. England has fought its last victorious battle against the French during the French Wars. A man called Ryder Sandman, who is a hero of Waterloo, has finally returned to London to wed his young bride, but he doesn't have money. He's penniless, and he becomes a government investigator. I'm not sure what that entails, but I think he has to solve some sort of mystery to reopen the case of a death row candidate accused of murder, a grisly murder plot that keeps thickening as he makes his way through gentlemen's clubs and shady taverns, aristocratic mansions, and fashionable painters' studios, unerringly determined to rescue the innocent young man from the rope. But somebody doesn't want the truth revealed. I love this cover so much. I think it's just so beautiful. And this copy of the book that I got was for a very reasonable price on eBay, and it's in basically like new condition. It does not have a stinky smell, which is also a bonus. There's no browning or foxing or anything like that. It's just really a nice, solid edition. Oh, and look at when you open it up, look at the inside of the end pages. There is the map. I just think the whole thing is a beautiful book. So I'm really excited to read Gallows Thief by Bernard Cornwell. Okay, another book, which I don't own a copy of yet, but I loved the movie edition of this. So I've always been curious about the book, and that is Master and Commander by Patrick O'Brian. I always kind of associate Bernard Cornwell and Patrick O'Brian together for some reason. But this is #1 in the Aubrey and Maturin books. And so this is ardent, gregarious British naval officer Jack Aubrey is elated to be given his first appointment as commander, the 14-gun ship HMS Sophie. Meanwhile, after a heated first encounter that nearly comes to a duel, Aubrey and a brilliant but down-on-his-luck physician named Stephen Maturin strike up an unlikely rapport, and Aubrey invites Maturin to join his crew as the Sophie's surgeon, and so begins the legendary friendship that anchors this beloved saga set against the thrilling backdrop of the Napoleonic Wars. So, I love that time period in and around the Napoleonic Wars and Waterloo and all of that. I just love that time period. And I really enjoyed the movie, Master and Commander. starring Russell Crowe. I thought he gave just a brilliant performance in that. And there's one scene in that movie that always sticks out in my mind, and that is when they are in a horrible, horrible storm, I think. I think it's a storm. I don't think it's a battle. I think it's a storm. And one of the sailors has climbed up the mast and is holding on for dear life. And on his knuckles, he has sailor's tattoos, because they have tattoos that have all kinds of symbolism and meaning, which is fascinating in and of itself. But on his knuckles, it says, "Hold fast." And he's gripping white-knuckled to the mast to hang on so that he doesn't fall off, pitching into the ocean and drowning. And that image has always stuck in my mind. And it's actually been something I remember in difficult times, are those, that white-knuckled everyday sailor who's gripping the mast so tightly. Hold fast. Just keep hanging on. Don't give up. So, yeah, I don't know if that's in the novel, but it's an image that's always stayed in my mind and made me interested in reading the novel. So, Master and Commander. I also missed the whole World War II train in historical fiction, that whole trend with 50 billion books where women who are smartly dressed in World War II outfits are walking away on the book covers. I never read any of those. I have missed the entire thing, but I don't want to miss out completely. Again, I have FOMO. I don't want to miss out, and so better late than never. I want to read some World War II fiction. Now, last year and again right now, I'm rereading Ariel Lahan's The Frozen River and loving it. And so I figured kind of a safe landing into World War II historical fiction would be Codename Helene by Ariel Lahan. And I was able to pick up this lovely, again, basically brand new edition of this book for $2 at a library book sale. And so I figured, come on, I have to get this. And so this is about a woman named Nancy Wake, who was a young journalist living in Paris in 1936 when she falls in love with someone and is swept off her feet, but then the Germans invade France and Nancy must take another name, a code name. And so she is a heroine, one of the most powerful leaders of the French resistance, known for her wit, her red lipstick, and her bravery in battle. And this chronicles the true exploits of a woman who deserves to be a household name. So I am so, I love history. I love wartime history. And unfortunately, I can't reach it right now, but I did about a year and a half ago present a book on spies, which is a beautifully illustrated book, and it's just like little mini biographies of all these different spies, and some of them are women from World War II, and I'm just so interested in that. So I don't know, has anyone read this? Would I love it? Should I try it? Let me know. And then, of course, there is the very well-known The Nightingale by Kristin Hannah. Now, I read The Women by Kristin Hannah, and I was not really a huge fan of it. That was the story of women working as field nurses in the Vietnam War. And so I really appreciate what the topic of the book was. I just wasn't a huge fan of Kristin Hannah's writing in that particular novel. But of all of her books, this is often the most highly praised, and this is The Nightingale. It's set in World War II. It begins in France in 1939. I don't know much about it, but I know it's the story of two sisters who are resisting the onslaught of the Nazi invasion, each in her own way. This is a beautiful edition of this book. Look at the lovely end pages here. I just think it's beautiful with the birds. It's gorgeous. So I'm willing to give Kristin Hannah another try, especially with this, since it's such a classic of historical fiction set in World War II. Where are all my horse girlies out there? When I was growing up, I was in love with horses. I was definitely a horse girl. I rode horses. I worked with horses. I jumped horses, and read tons and tons of girls' stories about horses and boys' stories. And so this one sounds absolutely delightful. And this is called Sonora by Jenny L. Walsh. And this received 4.32 stars on Goodreads. And apparently this is a great novel for anyone who loved the movie Wild Horses Can't Be Broken. And I count myself among those people. And so this was inspired by a true story, and it's about a young woman, and her name is Sonora Webster, and she is down on her luck and penniless, and so she decides to join what's sort of, I guess, like a traveling carnival during the Great Depression and the Dust Bowl. And she signs up with the show and becomes a horse diver, which is one of these things where you do a stunt, climbing like a 50-foot tower and then diving with a horse into a tank. And so she takes on this job, and I'm just reading the notes here. As Sonora delves into the cutthroat world of show business, complete with human cannonballs, trapeze aerial acts, and juggling bears, you know, snake oil salesmen, sideshows, things like that. Her undeniable talent and unwavering dedication propel her into the limelight. But when a tragic event changes her life, can Sonora muster the courage to climb the 50-foot tower again, diving and risking her life to save the show and their horses from falling into the wrong hands? I think this sounds wonderful. The cover is so summery too. It looks like it would be a marvelous book for maybe like May or June. In May, I always start to read books about animals. I started to do that actually after watching one of Kate Howe's challenges one year, in which she was reading books involving animals or with the subject of animals in them in the month of May. And so it's become kind of a tradition for me. So thank you, Kate, for getting me to start reading books about animals in the month of May. But June, I think, would also be a wonderful month to read Sonora. So that's definitely going on my list. And then I'm not sure how many of you know this, but I worked as a librarian for 5+ years at a semi-rural library. It was a 45 to hour-long commute back and forth every day, and I wore many hats there and fulfilled many different functions, including researching things for members of the public and community that would come in, and also looking up books and making book suggestions, all kinds of things. I think maybe sometime I'll make a video about my experiences as a librarian. But in any event, this next book, therefore, appeals really a lot to me. And I heard about this from Heather at Waterbear Reads, and this is The Giver of Stars by Jojo Moyes. And this is a title that I found at a local library sale for just a few dollars. It's a beautiful cover. And this is apparently about Eleanor Roosevelt's new traveling library and the daring women who went over all kinds of terrain to deliver books to people in rural areas, and about a young woman named Alice who signs up to be one of these librarians. That's about all I know about this, but it's supposed to be very good. It's also supposed to be a true story, and it's received very good reviews. It's beautiful looking, and sign me up. I am all for a book about librarians, traveling librarians especially. So there's that one. Then we have a book that is set in the Dust Bowl in Kansas in 1932, and this is Before Dorothy by Hazel Gaynor. I learned about this book from She's Becoming Bookish, Carly. So thank you, Carly, for this recommendation. And I love The Wizard of Oz, and this is about Auntie Em. This centers on the character of Auntie Em. And I'll just read the little blurb for it, which I have here. When news reaches Kansas that her beloved sister has tragically died, Emily Gale must become a mother overnight. Her sister's orphan child, Dorothy, desperately needs a home. But Emily doubts her ability to fill her sister's shoes, but she does open up her home to Dorothy. Can Emily overcome her grief and let Dorothy heal her heart? From the promise of Chicago in the 1920s to the harsh beauty of the Kansas prairie during the Dust Bowl of the 1930s, this is a story of family, duty, and one woman's journey of self-discovery. I'm fascinated by the Dust Bowl and have read several history books on the subject, and I also am a big fan of The Wizard of Oz. And here in New York State, we have several sites which are historic and relevant to L. Frank Baum and the women in his family particularly. So more on that in another video as well. The women in the family are especially fascinating. So this part of New York State has a lot of Oz history, and so we'll get into that in another video as well. But so in any event, I love things that are connected to The Wizard of Oz, and Before Dorothy by Hazel Gaynor sounds like something I'd like to add to my knowledge base. And finally, the last book I'm going to share with you today that is on my potential TBR list for 2026 in terms of historical fiction is a book called What the Wind Knows by Amy Harmon. This was a Goodreads Choice Award nominee for readers' favorite historical fiction in 2019. It is a love story. It is about a young woman named Anne Gallagher who has grown up listening to her Irish grandfather's wonderful stories of life back in Ireland. He passes away, and grieving, she travels with his ashes back to Ireland to scatter the ashes of her grandfather in the homeland. And she's very fascinated to learn more about Ireland. But I think this is a time slip novel. Yeah, it says she is pulled into another time, the Ireland of 1921, which is a hugely dangerous time period to be in, by the way. Teetering on the edge of war, it's a dangerous place in which to awaken. She finds herself hurt, disoriented, and under the care of Dr. Thomas Smith, guardian to a young boy who is oddly familiar and mistakes Anne for his mother. And as tensions rise, Thomas, who is the doctor, joins the struggle for Ireland's independence. And so she's caught between whether she's willing to let go of the life she knew before and stay here, or what she's going to do, all within the tumultuous framework of Ireland in the 1920s. Yeah, during the struggle for Irish independence. That sounds fascinating. And I'm sorry, but this book cover is stunning. And I've bought it. I haven't received it yet, but I cannot wait to get my hands on this. I'm wondering if this would be a good one to read in the month of March. Isn't there some sort of Irish readathon? I don't know if that's an entire year-long readathon or if it goes during the month of March. I'll have to research that and find out. But, you know, March seems like a good time to read some Irish historical fiction, doesn't it? So maybe I'll save it for then. What the Wind Knows by Amy Harmon. Well, that's everything I have for today. I hope you've enjoyed hearing about some of my pile of possibilities of historical fiction that I'm sort of excited about for 2026. Please let me know in the comments below if you've read and recommend any of the titles I've mentioned, no spoilers, or if you have other titles that I should check out, because you know I am always willing to add to the pile of possibilities and the TBR. That can be never ending, right? And that's the fun of it. So please let me know what historical fiction you would highly recommend, which ones you've read. I hope you're having a wonderful weekend. I hope you have a great week ahead, and we'll see you again real soon. Bye-bye.